Well, hello and welcome to Uncorking a Story. I'm your host,
Thank
Mike
you.
Carlin, and today I am excited to introduce you to Carleton Eastlake. Carleton graduated from UCLA with degrees in political science and psychology. I graduated with a degree in psychology as well. But he also graduated from Harvard Law School, where I did not go, with a concentration in law and the social sciences. And after a career in public policy and consumer protection law, being hired on Steven Spielberg's, I've heard that name before, series seaQuest, confirmed him as a television writer-producer. He has shared an Edgar and Saturn Awards and is a former board member of the Writers Guild of America West and a past president of Penn Center USA. And here today to talk about monkey business. I love the title. I love the cover. Is Carleton Eastlake. Welcome to Uncorking a Story, Carleton.
Thank you. And here is an even better view of the cover.
There.
I love book talk. So.
Oh, there it is. You know, I'm looking at the cover, and I will ask you my opening question in a minute, but I have to make this observation. The name Carl Hiaasen comes to mind when I see that book cover.
Yes, and one of my blurbers said, look out, Carl Hiaasen, here comes Carleton Eastlake. and Caitlin Sachs, who designed that cover, picked up on that. And also, that is the first page almost of the action, which is at the scene of a large club burning down in an orange grove, and the dancers who may have worked there seem to be disappeared.
Ooh, very intriguing.
Those are a dancer's legs, but if you look closely, no pole, and she may be rising instead of falling. Not clear.
Interesting. Well, I can't wait to dig into that more. But before we dig into the book, I need to know, Carleton, where does your story as an author begin?
It begins all the way back. I mean, I was always a big reader, and before I was writing, I would play and construct stories even with blocks. My family moved every year. My father was a traveling professor of medicine, traveling in that I am old enough that when I was a child, the further west in the US he moved, the higher his academic rank, because he had been on a Nobel-nominated team at Columbia. So, and back then medicine was a little uneven. So you had higher and higher status if you moved further west. And then he was in the military. He was in the Uniform Public Health Service. So I had to rely very much on my own resources and my own fantasy. I wrote my first short story that I can remember in 6th grade. In high school, and I don't want to get too long into this and tie up too much time, but in high school, I wrote a book report in freshman English. And my freshman English teacher said, Mr. Eastlake, will you step outside with me? And told the class, read the next novel. And we stepped outside, and he said, and I was 12. And he said, this is more than a book report that you wrote. Let me lead you across campus. I want you to meet our creative writing teacher. And then my high school let me take creative writing twice. So that was a real start. And this was a public high school, and it just supported me.
Yeah.
And raised me. I mean, my teachers raised me. My parents were crazy, but the teachers were beautiful.
Well, I hear that, often when I talk to particularly successful authors, that they had somebody in their life. And oftentimes it's a teacher, sometimes it's a librarian, but who recognizes potential in them. And then that kind of sets the stage for kind of what they ultimately become. Although it doesn't sound like it was a very straight line for you, going from sort of that kid taking creative, writing twice, being championed by that one teacher to where you are now. So bridge the gap for me. What did you wind up doing?
How much profanity can we use on
this? As much as you want.
Really?
Sure.
Okay, my father was a physician. So here I was writing in high school. And I'm going off to college, and I had the thought that maybe I want to become a writer. One of my father's patients and friends was head of production at Paramount Pictures. Never a use to me in my later career. Anyway, he's sitting there producing, I think, Goodbye Columbus at the time. I mentioned this, and he goes, clearly, get ready to bleed. He said, what? Carleton, why the fuck do you want to do such a shitty thing? God damn it. Don't you know the life of a writer just sucks? And I went, oh my God. I mean, every other word was a vile, Oh, so he partially scared me out of it. All this time I went off to college, and I went down to sign up at the film school at Columbia. I started at Columbia, and they'd advertise, come and become a film student, undergraduate film student. I went down in a typical fashion for the film industry, particularly at that time. No one was at the sign-up desk. So that put things off a little more. Then I transferred to UCLA, and I went to sign up in the UCLA undergraduate writing program, and they wouldn't let me in. They would not let me in. Later, I taught in the graduate film school, but they would not let me into the undergraduate short story class. So that delayed me quite a bit. So I became a lawyer, but working in media, you know.
Yeah.
So I was always in touch with that material.
So it's so interesting to me. I think we're at number 9 here of lawyers I've interviewed that who have subsequently become authors. What's the connective tissue there between, you know, a career in law or interest in law, and then ultimately kind of writing a novel or writing fiction?
Yeah, I think particularly in the immediate era in which I did it, there were just a lot of people who did not know what they wanted to do, but their time was up in college. And law was the general thing. I was working in politics. I was on the state central committee of California Young Democrats, and I was working on Henry Waxman's very first campaign. He became our congressman for 1 billion years. I was his ghostwriter for a newspaper column. So law looked like a way of dealing with human issues and public policy and influencing people without writing fiction. So that's what drove me into the law. And also I read Gideon's Trumpet, which was about how the law creates fundamental rights for all citizens, because that was, you know, the right to counsel, which now is under challenge in the Supreme Court today, and is a terrible thing that is under challenge. So there are a lot of reasons to go to law school to stall and yet still be working on human issues.
Yep. Well, tell me, pivoting to writing this book. Actually, before that, I mean, this is your debut novel. Do I have those? Okay, so writing short stories, anything like that beforehand, or this is it?
No, but I wrote and produced television for 25 years, and this novel is set on a television series that is still being created, still being piloted in part, and it's about to shoot its first episode on location in Florida, which I've done a zillion times. So, in fact, I shot in Florida on seaQuest, which was probably the most expensive show on television at the time, and I have shot around the world on location. So I was writing a lot of television, not prose. Though I always wrote a little bit of prose just for myself.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what are the big differences between writing for the screen and writing prose?
Seriously, being able to make a living. It really is. When I started in television, I told my then almost to be wife, we were engaged. I was only going to do television long enough to afford to be a novelist. And her friends told her, wow, you picked a good one. Don't marry him. What a crazy plan. But I made quite a lot of money in television, and I stayed in television longer than I would have. But I mean, people ought to know, and readers ought to know, when they talk about how we bleed on the page, literary, serious novelists cannot make a living as novelists. I mean, sure, Sally Rooney maybe, but that was probably the one person that year who broke into making a living as a literary novelist. Literary novelists make their living working as adjunct professors at some university, and they got the position because they had a well-respected novel. Very, very hard. So, and I enjoyed it. Television's easier if you know how to do it. It's fast. It took 2 years physically to produce this novel after it was done. 2 years. Whereas in television, particularly in the broadcast era, it'd be more like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So
yeah, no, most authors, novelists have day jobs. You mentioned a couple. Sometimes they run focus groups and podcasts too. So that's
absolutely. It's just not a field where the compensation concentrates on a few enough people to actually support them. We're having that, I'm on the membership and finance committee at the Writers Guild now, and I was on the Writers Guild board. We're having this problem with new television writers, that they are having trouble living on their salaries or fees as staff writers. particularly if there are staff writers in a fake team because a show has broken all the rules and forced them to split their fee with another staff writer, they're not making a living at all. They're really not making a middle-class living. So it is really hard now, even in television, for a fair number of people.
Yeah.
I was very lucky when I did it.
Yeah.
Because back then you could make a lot of money.
Yeah.
So,
what were some of the shows that in addition to seaQuest, what else were you involved with?
I started on the original V.
Oh God, Mark Singer, right? Mark Singer.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Great. That was Robert Englund was in that too, wasn't he?
Yes.
Yeah.
They were terrific. I mean, I was just a freelancer, and there's quite a story to it that I sometimes tell, but how I got that episode, I had 5 days as a freelancer, story and teleplay. So it was sort of trial by fire. We had the aliens had a helicopter gunship sort of thing with ray guns on it in there, which was actually the Red Dawn helicopter that the production was renting. So they asked me to write this helicopter rescue and attack and all that, which I did. They lost their budget and it turned into a pickup truck. But Universal looked at it and said, by God, you can write helicopters. And so we have this new show, Airwolf, and it's about a helicopter. So then I wrote the helicopter in Airwolf, and Airwolf was flown by a renegade, CIA Special Forces agent. Then they said, you write great renegade Special Forces agents. We got this new show, The Equalizer. So I moved from helicopters to renegades, and a career was launched.
Oh God, my brother and I have a twin brother named Jim, who's a lawyer. We probably watched everything you've ever written. Because that's all up our alley. Was Airwolf Michael Jan Vincent? Was he in that, or who was it? Yeah, it was him, right?
Michael Jan Vincent.
Gosh, yeah.
I just got a royalty from it. It still flies somewhere.
No kidding. Well, I remember that, and Blue Thunder came out, I think, around the same time. They're like occupying the same headspace in my head.
Yeah, I think it was ripped off from Blue Thunder, the film. That's what inspired them to do a TV show.
Yeah.
So
Roy Scheider, if I remember correctly.
Yes, and then I worked with Roy on seaQuest. So
right. Well, very cool.
Yeah, that was his transition to science fiction and blowing things up.
Yeah. Let's talk about Monkey Business. Tell me just the genesis, how this idea came to you, why it's set in Florida. I probably have a good idea just because I just came back from there yesterday, but tell me a little bit more about Monkey Business.
The genesis is kind of complicated. There is the concept in psychoanalysis and in psychodynamic psychology of being overdetermined. That is to say, you can keep identifying things, any one of which would have been a cause, but all of these things are combining into a cause. The real world root of this is I went on, when we first moved seaQuest down to Florida, I was taken on a location scout before we started production. And this was long ago, before Me Too. The location scout indeed took us to a strip club, a gentleman's club, which appears very early in the book. And I was very happily married and started talking to the girls, professional title, the young women working in the club instead of buying dances. And they were in show business. I mean, absolutely, they're in show business and they're acting, they're creating a persona and they're projecting. And we were talking just a little bit about being in show business. And out of that conversation grows the very critical conversation that really launches the novel. In the novel, really horrible producers, not just all the guys going on a location scout before women were allowed to be human beings in Hollywood, but the guys going on location scout, these horrible producers take them to this club and they think they're hiring this dancer to sort of take him off to a VIP area and kind of bully him, haze him, humiliate him because he's shy and is not like them. But in fact, she's already induced them to do that, though they don't quite realize it. And she leads him off into the back. And she starts questioning him about creativity and free will and the origins of consciousness, and claims that she is an anthropologist looking for signs of rational life on Earth. Ha ha ha, no. that's the story she tells to freak people out. She's an unwed mother. Yes, that's it. And she keeps changing the number of children that she's had. And she says, we know we're poor, we keep having more. And obviously he has no idea who she is, what the truth about her is, but she is so smart. And she so detests these people that he detests. He falls in love at first sight. And it's limerent love, which she later talks about quite a bit with him. That is to say, some enchanted evening, you see somebody across a crowded room, love at first sight.
Yeah, very South Pacific.
Yeah. And so that is the start of the story. And then he feels that just as she actually engineered their hiring her to talk to him, she's engineering a lot of stuff, that he's in a magic theater story, like The Magus, like Steppenwolf, like The Tempest, Shakespeare, Miranda, and that a lot of stuff's going on around him that is beginning to teach him things, change things, also teach his producers some hard lessons. And it leads into a novel that most people describe as really unexpected. Publisher says, fast-paced Hollywood adventure, and that teaches you how to create and produce a TV show, which is true. And other people say, my God, this is a novel of ideas. This is a little unusual for this decade. So
yeah. Well, what was the sort of the process of pitching it? Getting in front of an agent. I mean, did you have an in with somebody, or how did that go? Because I imagine it's, of course, it's different than pitching a script. So.
Yeah, totally. No, I just wrote it. I mean, I was quite serious. I did television long enough that I could afford to be a novelist. I worked in television in a golden era where people made about writer producers made about 4 times as much as they do now, as we've turned into this horribly oppressive economy that we have now. It was an economy of gunslinging writers, and you really did your own stuff and you took it to the stage and you got paid a lot. So I spent no money. I saved it all so I could be a true, free, unfettered novelist. So no, I wrote it and then I took it out. And my agent was reading it and coming up with all sorts of notes to substantially change it, when at the same time, at 11 o'clock at night, I got an email from the acquiring editor at Red Hen Press saying, I just got a copy of your manuscript and I just finished reading it and I want to have it. I got to have it. I'll talk to you first thing in the morning. So it was bought at 11 o'clock at night before my agent really had a chance to work on it. And that just came about at the happenstance that we had both been presidents of Penn, the editor at Red Hen, and I've been a president at Red Hen, and she really asked, Red Hen is, an NEA supported press, National Endowment. They don't work much. They'd love to work with agents, but agents, tend to go to the big commercial houses, not the serious art houses. And so she got her hands on it and read it. So it was a very easy process. It only took about 25 years to get there, and then it was very easy.
Well, those seeds take a long time to grow,
Yeah.
From your experience
at
the Gentleman's Club down in Florida to where we are now.
Yeah, I went that V episode in 5 days, but it taken me at least 3, maybe 5 years of breaking things down. And I had 30 pages of notes for their show when I went into pitch, and that had taken weeks to write. So anyway, prepare for luck.
So, but just looking back on the career, which kind of started, it stopped before it started when that, person was, screaming at you, telling why do you want to be a writer, to kind of where you kind of coming full circle. What would you say to that person if you could, I don't know if they're still around, but if you could talk to them today, what would you tell that person?
Well, I mean, the tragedy is he was telling the truth. It is very hard. I mean, the life of, and he was particularly thinking of screenwriters. And I have done some screenplays, I've had a 2-hour that's released as a home video, but I've never done a theatrical 2-hour screenplay, though weirdly, I have one under option at the moment. But the life of an awful lot of screenwriters compared to television writers was powerless and very much abused, which is really why we founded the Writers Guild in the first place back in the 30s.
Yeah.
TV writers, after the period in which he said that to me, TV writers, however, seized control of television because we were the choke point. We were the bottleneck in meeting broadcast schedules. Of course, the concept, just as the concept of the auteur director who gets to abuse everybody arose in film, the concept of the showrunner arose in television, and showrunners really, really had to be writers because no one else could deliver the stuff fast enough and make it all work. So it was not nearly as bad for TV writers, but I've been on, and this book tells the story of what happens when you're on a really bad show run by egotistical bad people who are, it's monkey business, who are, well, this beautiful dancer is talking about primate ethology and dominant strategies and monkey stacking in alliances to attack and kill the children of their rivals in the troupe. Of course, this is about producers that are stacking in alliances and getting together to kill the scripts of rivals who are trying to control the show and invalidate them by destroying what they've already written. So yeah, it can be very, very tough. But that's true of industry, commerce, and the wider world. There's office politics everywhere because we are noisy monkeys. We are very, very smart apes, and we have all the dominance moves, all of those impulses pushing on our consciousness to find expression. And of course, you see it every day.
Yeah. So it sounds like you kind of really dipped a lot into your professional experiences to put this together.
Oh yeah, very, very much so. This book actually replicates how I survived and made a fair amount of money in Hollywood. She has him read 3 books. If he wants to see her again, he desperately wants, to take a cabin cruise, at high speed up the space coast and make love under the stars. In order to get there, he has to read 3 books that she's assigned him. They're the books that I assigned my students in film school for them to really understand how to survive in Hollywood. So this actually is a survival manual, even though it sounds like an insane novel with a weird love story with weird tests from Glenda the Good Witch of the past. These are the real books. So much so, the book launch, the official book launch is in 2 weeks, and she didn't know it, but I summarized much of what is known about primate ethology and how you compare it to human behavior that had been written in one very charming book. So that was Manipulative Monkeys, UCLA professor. So I sent her a copy once the novel was done and said, I fictionalized you in this novel. And she wrote back saying, that is the most unusual mail I've ever gotten as a college, university researcher. And she's coming to the opening where I'll introduce her.
Well, that's great.
This book is it's a survival manual for humankind, disguised as an insane love story.
What were the 3 books that you recommended your students read and she made him read?
The next crash you hear will be the books toppling. I have them here, and I'm probably gonna. Oh God, I do have them here, and that is Love and Limerence. 75% of people are incapacitated at some point in their school or work life by limerence. Limerence, as I said earlier, is that all-consuming desire to pursue somebody, to bond with them. And you walk down their streets singing Suddenly I'm Several Stories High, but you're very shy about it, and you're afraid very often to let them know, and you're sort of approaching them sideways, but you want to be around them and you want to talk about them. And she wrote the book when a grad student came into her office and said, oh, I can't finish my thesis because I'm losing my mind, and went running down the hall. And Dorothy Towne said, I was teaching clinical psychology. It occurred to me, I ought to do something about this. And chased her down and found out that she was in love with this guy and it wasn't reciprocated. And Dorothy went, funny, I've never been really trained about this. I've been trained anxiety, depression, even pathological stalking by, people with fantasies. But so she forced her grad students to take a survey. Well, 75%, even at that age, reported it had happened to them. And they could not eat, they could not sleep, they couldn't finish their homework. So she did a beautiful study of everything that's involved. It is very clear to me as a student of ethology, these are really buttons built into our brain, and they start firing off these behaviors. And they ought to teach it in high school. And of course, hardly anybody knows about it, even now. They know about junk self-help books. But that is really the real thing. Then, of course, manipulative monkeys. And finally, Life of Chairman Mao. Why? Because his doctor was a brilliant biographer and perfectly observed and explained all the destructive power games that Mao played and how he amassed power and how he attacked followers of his rivals instead of the rivals, on and on. If you worked in politics, if you worked with crazy producers, if you watched Donald Trump's campaign and presidency, if you actually read this book and actually paid attention, you never were surprised. You recognize all the strategies. They're all here. They're all here. So I taught my film students, really, read these, and then you'll understand what you're up against at the studio.
Right. Yeah. Forget Paradise Lost. Just read those 3 books.
The other side of Paradise is one of the books that got me writing in high school. But anyway.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, we're just about out of time, but I have to know. I see a CD rack behind you.
Yeah.
What are some of the your favorite CDs on that rack?
Oh my gosh, Serialistic Pillow is my all-time. I went to 3 different Jefferson Airplane Starship concerts when I was in college. Not a single one ever came to conclusion. They all collapsed in riots and technical difficulties, mostly because the equipment was being stolen as they played. So that and anything by Puccini. So
oh, there you go.
Range.
A nice range. Yeah. I mean, I remember, God, what was that abomination in the 80s? Starship. We built the city on rock and roll.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, what was that all about? I can't wrap my head around it. But anyway, Carleton, this has been a fun conversation. The book is Monkey Business. Where can people go? Where and when can people go to buy Monkey Business?
It is on the tables in the stores on May 3rd. It's up for pre-sale now everywhere around the world. It is on Amazon. It's on all your local bookstores, have it on their website, and you can go in and pre-order it. It's on my website with links from around the world. If you're watching this in Australia, the chains in Australia have it up on their sites for pre-sale in Barnes & Noble and Bookshop and Amazon and everybody, the publisher. It is available everywhere. And if you're in LA, Diesel Books, where I'm doing the book launch, will even send you a signed copy.
Oh, fantastic. Well, there
Diesel
it is.
Books, Diesel, a bookstore in Brentwood. Find them on the web or on my webpage is the link. And then May 3rd, it explodes across the land. And
what is the website address, Carleton?
My website address is me. It's Carleton Eastlake it's CarletonEastlake.com. It's me. So I'm about to give my email address. It's CarletonEastlake.com. Don't forget the E in Carleton. Also, I think .net.org.
Well, yeah, you don't want to give out your email address because people will email you without a doubt.
They will, but I checked the other day. My email address is the second thing that comes up on Google after my name.
Oh, well, there you go. Well, Carleton, thank you very much. Good luck with the book. And yeah, all the best.
Okay. This was fun.